Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Big Sky Now podcast. I am your host, Josh Amick, with my panel, Ian, Fritz, and John. No Mark this week, but I did get word from Mark earlier, hot news, breaking news, that he should be able to join us next week. So next week, we should have the panel back, the four people on the panel for the Final Four team. So hopefully that all works out. But jumping into what happened over the weekend, we got to start with the Grizz. They weren't able to get it done. Didn't score a touchdown until late in the fourth quarter. We all picked South Dakota State to win this game. I don't think none of us were shocked by it, but were we a little surprised by Montana's, I guess, lack of effort, John?
For me, not terribly too much. I mean, it's a team that's shown that they've been inconsistent that year. I think all year they've shown at times that they could compete with South Dakota State, but they've never been able to consistently do that. And I really didn't think that they would be able to going into this week. I think I was a bit surprised by the Keely Ayat starting news that came out. I think seeing that Logan Fife has entered the transfer portal, I wonder if he maybe didn't let Bobby know of that ahead of the game, and that influenced the decision for Ayat to start. But yeah, South Dakota State came out and showed why they're the two-time defending champions. The Gronowski's still a great quarterback, even though he's not in the final three for the player of the year. The Johnsons picked apart the Grizz defense in their running game. So it just was South Dakota State showing that they're still looking for that three-peat.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't surprise me. It kind of surprised me that Montana covered. They backdoor covered the 22 and a half point spread late in the game. There's a couple of guys that should be in that final three. I think Gronowski and a guy from UC Davis. We'll talk about him in a minute. The Jackrabbits were dominant. The big problems for the Grizz are up front, really. Chad Germer was basically banished to MSU Northern, their O-line coach. They hired a new O-line coach, and that O-line didn't get any better. They just really struggled protecting and establishing a really good power running game. It didn't really happen on a consistent basis. And then the D-line regressed, which I guess shouldn't be a surprise because Gubner was that good, but I thought they'd be a little bit better in the front seven than they were this year. And it's just kind of par for the course. A lot of skill kids that you would have liked to have seen in space with the Grizz this year. It just didn't happen for them, especially the latter half of the year. Maybe that was because the other teams game planned them better, but it's kind of disappointing that they weren't better on offense.
Yeah, just looking back on this game, it's hard to believe that Montana had a lead at one point, going up 3-0 in that first quarter after the field goal off the turnover. But like Fritz just mentioned, and we talked about it last week as well, I really would have liked to see Junior Bergen get the ball in some kind of space on offense in this game.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you guys about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had 2 catches for like 15 yards or 17 yards or something like
17 yards,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of hard to believe that, especially, when the game's kind of getting out of hand like it was, throughout most of it until, Montana gets back and covers the spread, like Fritz just mentioned. Just give him the ball on a screen, give him the ball on an end around, something like that. I really would have liked to see that, especially when things aren't rolling your way. I also talked last week about just kind of how the run defense is not the same as it was last year. And I almost called them San Diego State. South Dakota State ran for 200 plus yards on them over the weekend. So just not much was going right for Montana in this one.
Yeah, I don't know from all the games that we've covered over the year, if there has ever been a time where Montana's run offense got stifled that much. I think Gilman had 10 carries for 21 yards or something like that. So
I think it was 12, actually,
Yeah.
12 yards.
Oh, 12 yards. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to watch this game. What were they doing differently? Were they making them a pass first team and Ayat wasn't able to get it done? Looking at his stats, it looked like he had too bad of a game.
Well, Ayat threw for 147 in the fourth quarter. So I think he was going against 2s and 3s because the game was in hand. And another weird thing about the Gilman is he averaged less carries this year than he did last year. Gained more yards, averaged a good chunk of change per carry, but early on they'd be behind the sticks. He'd get 1 or 2 yards on the first down carries, and then they were throwing, and they're just not a very good throwing team all of a sudden. The second half of the year, and I don't know, they used to like really feed the stud, whether it was Lex Hilliard or Chase Reynolds or whomever, and neither him nor Osmo, who by the way didn't play Saturday, really ever got more than 15 carries a game. I thought maybe Saturday would have been a day for Gilman to get that 20 or 22nd carry just to see if he popped one.
Yep. All right, we're going to move on to the other team in Montana with Montana State. They had no problems with UT Martin winning 49-17. Tommy Mellott was super efficient, 22 of 25. But what else was impressive in this Bobcats win? It's just seemed like we're kind of running out of things to compliment them, Fritz.
I know. Well, I think Tennessee Martin really wanted to make a good stand against the run game and force Tommy to throw it more. And it didn't work out. The bad news is Tommy Mellott's gotten better every year at throwing the football. It was pretty limited offensive. No, that's not what I want to say. It's pretty limited as far as the route trees when he was a younger quarterback. There's a lot of sideline throws, a lot of fades, and he's throwing up the seam and he's finding guys and he's buying times and he's on target. I've seen him make one bad throw, I think, all year, and that was in the Grizz game. And the very next play, he dropped a dime for a touchdown to Rohan Jones. He's a great player, and on top of being better every year passing, he's still one of the fastest guys on the field. So it's tough on teams. You add in the other running backs like Adam Jones and Scott Humphrey. It's big problems.
Yeah, we've given a lot of shine to Montana State on the offensive side of the ball this year. I want to give them some credit on defense. 5 sacks over the weekend. Held UT Martin, who likes to run the ball. They like to run the ball coming in. We talked about that last week. Held them to under 100 rushing yards and 2.6 yards per attempt. That's pretty impressive on in a playoff game like this. And it also kind of jumped out to me. They were able to close out this game against another playoff team in UC Davis a couple weeks ago. Obviously, those two teams are a bit different. We saw UC Davis was able to come back in that one and get it to a 2-point game. This week, they were able to not let UT Martin come back in the game and win very convincingly.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback onto that defensive side of things, the beginning of the game, Montana State was up 21-0 before the defense gave up a first down. So they started hot and they continued all the way through. But I want to give a shout out to the offense just for the fact that they were missing Rohan Jones and Julius Davis from this game that were banged up. And Mellott completed 22 passes to 11 different wide receivers. And that's just crazy to me that many receivers got in there and got touches of the ball.
So we're going to move on to Idaho. Idaho is getting chunk play after chunk play. Buchanan returned for them. And the Vandals won pretty easily, 34-13. Did this win prove the point that we were all kind of suggesting last week, that Idaho was ranked a little too low on the seeding? Or what else stood out to you in this performance by the Vandals, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, the way they came out kind of looked like they wanted to prove that they belong maybe a little higher in these seedings. But the main thing that jumped out to me, first offensive drive of the game. Do you think they were excited to get Sean Buchanan back? They gave him the ball 9 times on their first offensive drive in that one. But the thing that really jumped out to me, turnover-free football. That's something they're really going to need next week against Montana State. So big win for the Vandals. Get rolling after that bye week.
Yeah, they kept it clean. They showed what the offense can do, and now that they're getting healthy again with Buchanan back, Lane's making some consecutive starts now, and he found through a couple of dimes, had some great catches also from the receiving court. So yeah, the Vandals, I think, are playing with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder from that seeding. And also on the defensive side, Fritz's guy, Keyshawn Newby, got in there, and he was putting a lot of pressure in there, got a sack, at least one. And then Zach Johnson getting the pick 6, also huge to force the turnover and get points on that side of the ball as well.
Yeah, and to answer the question, yeah, I think Idaho should have been seeded higher. I still think it's a tragedy that the 3 best teams in the Big Sky Conference are all on the same side of the bracket. I'd rather see Idaho and the Bobcats play round 2 next week, not this Friday, which is what'll happen. And yeah, Lane's Lane was the number one quarterback for a reason. He looked really good. The offense looked good. The defense looked good. There'll be a nice tough test for the Bobcats Friday.
Moving on to the other Big Sky team that had a great win was UC Davis. They looked refreshed. Hastings throwing over for 400 yards. They held Illinois State to 10 total points, but 0 in that second half. Is this what we expected from UC Davis in their playoff debut, and them being at home, or were we still kind of shocked by this performance, John?
I think it's great athletes doing great things. I'm not too surprised by the performance, especially because Illinois State gave up over 500 passing yards the week before to Southeast Missouri. So a better quarterback in Hastings. No offense to De Laurent with SEMO, but Hastings and Larison too. He combined for almost 200 yards of offense between rushing and receiving. He went over 100 on the ground. And then 3 touchdowns through the air and 3 touchdowns on the ground for UC Davis was a great performance. So it's definitely inspiring for them. Being, this is just their 3rd appearance in the playoffs. So just trying to get some wins as a team since they've moved up from D2. I think it's going to be interesting to see if this offense can keep it up now that they go on the road to a South Dakota team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the only thing I was really surprised about was that the attendance. They just didn't. I think they listed it at 6,300, but Aggie Stadium only holds like a little bit over 10,000. I don't know if they had 6,000 there, and Coach Tim Plow was not very happy about it. He let people know about it afterwards. So, of course, now they get to take it on the road and to Vermilion and get a nice loud crowd to play in front of. You figured, like John said, that offense was going to get going against a team that allowed over 600 yards to SEMO. I think the Aggies wound up with 558 on Saturday, and Lion Larson's a beast, and Miles Hastings threw for over 400. So I'm not too awfully surprised, and I'm happy that they represented the Big Sky Conference well.
I think the thing that maybe surprised me a little bit the most was just the defense performance that UC Davis had. Fewest points allowed against a ranked opponent this season. They allowed plenty of yards. I think Illinois State had like 400 yards, but the UC Davis defense came up in some really big spots. Had the field goal block, forced a field goal inside the 5-yard line, 2 punts around midfield for Illinois State, and 3 turnovers on down in the red zone. So allowed them to move up and down the field, but came up when it mattered. So that's what really jumped out to me the most in this one.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up, because that's something that's important to me, in my opinion, in playoff football, is that bending and don't break. You can allow them to move the ball downfield, but when you hold teams to field goals or missed field goals or no touchdowns, that's really when you can win playoff games. Moving on to a subject that John kind of spoke on earlier, Noah Fife is deciding to enter the transfer portal. Fritz, I know you just wrote a story about this. I do want to speak about how important that loss is to the Grizz of losing Fife, but also how important was it that Ayat got that start over the weekend, and now he has a playoff game under his belt.
Well, he got a little bit of playoff action last year they were able to play him and keep his redshirt freshman year on the books. I think they wanted in their hearts of hearts to have a 4-year starter in Kiali Ayat, and it just didn't work out. And then I thought they put him back in there after he got his bell rung in the one game, and then he wound up missing a couple. And when he missed a couple, Logan Fife stepped in and had 2 300-yard passing games. So it's just a weird. I've seen a lot of weird things with QBs at Montana. They've been through a lot of 1-year guys. I guess Logan Fife is another one. He's in the portal, and this one was especially odd. And then when you go back, Bobby Howe came back in 2018, and he brought back Dalton Sneed with him. And when he did that, it became clear that during spring drills, he's going to be a starter. And that's when people really started transferring out. Dress Jansen transferred out that year. Cam Humphrey stuck around as Sneed's backup. He spent 1 year as a starter. And then he was done. He was graduated. And then you had Daniel Bett was in for a little bit, but he transferred out after playing behind Lucas Johnson, who was a 1-year guy that came in from San Diego State. So it's just been on and on. I thought this year, and I think the coaches thought this year that Ayotte would bring some stability and be a guy that was going to be around for a long time with a lot of starts and be productive. And he wasn't very productive, and part of it was injuries, and part of it is that offense just really regressed as the year went on.
John, something you spoke on earlier was with Fife getting the playing time that he was, how it could be like persuading Ayotte to transfer as well. Do you think now with Fife gone and Ayotte playing in the game on Saturday, it's safe to say Ayotte's going to be here for a while?
I mean, I still think it's going to come down to what happens in the spring ball, like Fritz was mentioning, and what happens in the transfer portal. I would be shocked if Montana did not bring in another quarterback just to make it a competition.
Me too.
There's also some young players that are coming in that are also freshmen or sophomores that might want to put their name into the hat for that job too. From what I saw from Ayotte this year, I definitely think he has the upper hand on a lot of guys, but he wasn't as polished as I think that they wanted, like Fritz was saying, and so it'll be a big offseason for him to see just kind of how much he progresses as a quarterback.
Just so I don't leave you out on this topic, Ian, I do want to ask you, how big do you think that sideline debacle with Hawk and Fife was back against Portland State had anything to do with this, or you just think it's more so Fife knows that he has 1 year left and he has to make the most of it?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter there. I think obviously that was a big thing when it came up, that little sideline, I don't know, squabble they got into, I guess you could put it. But no, I think it was more just he has 1 year left. I realized realizes they probably want to move forward with Ayotte or bring another guy in from the portal. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw this, Vesperis entered the portal earlier today.
Yeah.
No, I did not. I did not see that at all.
I think like an hour, 2 hours before we started recording, but yeah, it's a big name in the portal in the Big Sky, across the Big Sky. But anyway, moving back to the topic, I think it is important to kind of ride with one quarterback. That way you have some consistency within an offense. I think they do probably still want to build around Ayotte. He has some really standout moments this year. I think back to that North Dakota game. I think back to the Western Carolina game where I think he ran for 4 touchdowns, if I remember right. Certainly he's had some good moments, but I mean, as we saw down the stretch, there is a lot to work on as well. I do think the key thing to remember is he's a redshirt freshman, and they're going to make some mistakes like this, especially in their young career. But I'm excited to see what, if he does end up staying in Montana, what an off season of developing can do for him and coming back for another year.
Yeah, if I could just jump in for a second. Yeah, I think he's only going to get better. And then you look at what's in the quarterback room right now. It's Ayotte, it's Caden Hewitt from Helena High. It's a kid named Luke Flowers who just redshirted out of Rigby, Idaho, and then Gage Slider from Glacier. And I'd be surprised, like John, if another portal QB didn't come in this year.
We shall see. We definitely know that the portal is heating up. I just was reading an article about that earlier today. So a lot of moving pieces. Vesperis, obviously, that's breaking news. I didn't see that yet. So we'll see what happens with the transfer portal. And I had to bring up that sideline dispute because that was the only game I was at this season. So it looked a lot worse watching it than what they said it was after the game. But who knows? It's all speculation. That's going to wrap up this episode of the Big Sky Now podcast. I want to thank my panel, as always, Ian, Fritz, and John, for joining me. They're going to join us again on Thursday. We'll break down the final 8 teams that are left in the FCS playoffs, and there's 3 Big Sky teams left. So we'll do a deep dive onto each one of those teams and the matchups they have this weekend, including another Big Sky conference rematch. But until Thursday, we'll see you all then. Thank you for my panel. Until then, take care.